If you've got big dreams and bad genes, you are in the right place. Bromley shirts are available at barbellapparel.com. Link is in the description. Really, the durability that is required, not just to kind of exist at this level, but to make it at that rate, to go from 7, 8, 9, 1,000 pounds in such a period of time. What do you credit your durability to when it comes to making that rise, but also to being able to compete so aggressively at these high level shows at the pace that you're keeping up right now?
The first thing I think people need to understand is I think your durability has a genetic capacity just like everything else does. And so let's say that I can go to a Giants Live and I can perform events at 90% of my capacity. Well, even if that absolute number is very high, if it's well within my means, I can control the weight well. I don't have to overreach per se. And so the amount of time that I overreach is limited. And to be honest, more often I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing in training when I'm overreaching than something in competition. But when we think about the body and how it adapts, I think a big error that can be made is specializing in strength sports early. And the reason that I think that's an error is because naturally the body responds and reacts to the forces placed on it. And whilst it might feel like a maximum deadlift is the most force your spine is ever going to feel, if you jump off a 6-foot ledge and land on your heels, it's probably more force than a deadlift. So I think having a huge athletic background in a variety of things has made my body robust in ways that strongmen wouldn't have trained me to be. And I also think the kinesthetic awareness from a variety of sports in the past has been a big asset to me. So every time I give people advice who are 15, 16, 17, wanting to become world's strongest man, I always say just worry about moving and learning your body and enjoying sports. And then after you're 22, 23, 24, that's probably the time to go full into it.
And you have a pretty robust background. I mean, you've done everything from American football to golf and running marathons and so on. And that's a point of discussion pretty often is, well, is that type of work something that you can expect to provide transfer, or is it something that's different entirely, or chicken or the egg? You know, are you something special that's able to do all these things? I happen to subscribe kind of to that perspective that you always go from broad to narrow in your training, and the more well-rounded you are in the beginning, the better off you're going to do. That's an interesting point, though, because when you compare kind of the best strongmen, or I should say some of the most legendary ones, you go back to the early days like Bruce Wilhelm and Kaz and Don Reinhardt. Many of them were like, you know, Olympic lifters or collegiate wrestlers, or did all kinds of things. And I always thought about that from a performance standpoint. Did that help their performance? But I never thought about that from a durability standpoint, as far as making you, you know, able to persist longer.
For sure. And every sport has its common injuries and common movement patterns where you look at it and you just wince and you just know something bad is going to happen. We know that in strength sports for sure. But there's a different set of movements in golf where you're looking, going like, that's not right. And so playing, say, 10 different sports at a high level, I have a variety of kinesthetic awareness of just immediate, like, this freaks me out, I'm not going to do it. And I think that's why I can push harder in training than a lot of people and avoid anything serious, because I know when something serious is going to occur. At least I believe that I do right now. And I think that's how I've avoided it to date. I do have the full admission, though, at some stage, something is going to fall off a bone. That's just the nature of the sport.
It is, and that's something you have to accept going into it, or you're going to have a rude awakening. I think the joke goes, right, you're not really a strong man until you've lost a bicep. I lost mine flipping a tire, and I don't even want to tell you what the tire weighed. So given that reality of the sport, and especially like injuries, they're not just a pain in the ass. They set you back so much. It's like you can't get training and build up that momentum to get to the height that you need to if you're dealing with these little niggles or tweaks or strains or whatever. What interests me is you said you think you know when something's about to go wrong, or you assign some like kind of conscious awareness to when you're overreaching, and that's I don't want to say an argument. That's kind of a point of curiosity I've had, especially with a lot of like the movement optimist people, or people that kind of paint with a broad brush as far as what the causes of injuries are, because it seems very difficult to try to give real hard actionable advice to people with like, this is what you need to pay attention to in your training, because it could be so many things. What are some of like the concrete things you look to kind of keep you on the straight and narrow, to keep you in that like balance of stress and recovery where shit just doesn't go flying off the bone? Ever find yourself confused by the complexity of programming? I know I struggled like crazy in my early strongman career. There was just too much advice, and every decision I made felt like a guess. As soon as I hit a snag in any program, I would have no idea what to do, so I would inevitably bail. It took me years of training and coaching to figure out how to predictably increase muscle and strength, both in myself and others. And those lessons took me to my own showings in World's Strongest Man, America's Strongest Man, and the Arnold in the 231-pound weight class. This is why we made BaseStrength AI, to give clear, direct, and personalized instruction right in the middle of your workout in real time. BaseStrength AI features 3 programs: Block, 70s Powerlifter, and Bullmastiff, each one inspired by the work ethic and programming of the biggest and strongest bodybuilders, powerlifters, and strongmen throughout history. These templates originated in my book Base Strength, and they can be ran as is, but with BaseStrength AI, weight and volume are prescribed to you on your specific feedback, and that's personalization that even an online coach can't replicate. This gives you the absolute certainty that every rep is meaningful, that every block of training is getting you closer to your goals. It's my programming, but it's your program. Get the heart of old school training with the intelligence of a coach right in your back pocket. Head now to basestrength.com.
Yeah, well, look, I say I think I know very intentionally because I know someday I'm going to think I know and learn that I, in fact, do not know. Um, but it's often the types of pain that's being experienced, and understanding the difference between a inflammatory like pain, like a tendonitis of sorts, to a more chronic pain. What does a muscle pain feel like when it's torn versus DOMS? What does a tendon pain feel like when it's a dire concern and when it's just something that's going to be annoying? And it's body part specific as well. We all know knee pain and squatting. Your knees can feel absolutely horrendous squatting, but you're going to be diagnosed with patellofemoral pain syndrome, which just means that you have a sore knee, and you're like, yeah, I know, that's why I came here in the first place. You never really have that explode into something. That being said, if you go up above the knee and you've got quad tendon pain for a sustained period of time that's not improving, you're losing quad mobility. Okay, now we're thinking that this could be a problem. So the best example I have for you is I had some sort of tear at the Rogue Invitational on my bicep. I don't know what or how much or how bad, because I have the Canadian medical system to deal with, so I don't have the privilege of imaging because I'm not dying. But that type of pain, that sharp, pinchy pain, especially unloaded, especially not improving with movements, I knew that is something that if I pushed and tested, it was not going to turn out well for me. So I firmly believe I avoided a complete rupture by just being reasonable and going, this type of pain is not acceptable, where I'll go through a back pain, or I deal with the right hip bursitis all the time. And I know bursitis is bursitis. You're not going to lose your hip because of it. It's just going to be really annoying, and all that's going to happen is it gets more painful or less painful. So that's the best explanation I can give you. I'm probably somewhere halfway between the movement optimists and the, I don't want to call them evidence-based on the other side, because I think there's evidence supporting either. But there's certainly, I think we would agree, a lack of clarity on exactly why things happen and how they happen. And anyone with a correct answer is someone with an incorrect answer. So I just, I try to manage myself based on how I feel. And I think intuition is an extremely valuable thing for someone who's trained and educated, even to a small degree, even YouTube educated, 10 hours worth. I would say you probably have the best idea of if this is okay for you or not. And moving ahead that way, I've found is really successful. The only additional thing I'll add, with injuries in the first place, the psychological component seems to be as large as the physical components. And so if you have full confidence that you're moving in a way that's not going to hurt you, I believe that confidence in the definitiveness in which you move and in which you try to do things will also contribute to a reduced risk of injury.
Yeah, it's something being like in your line of sight, taking up your conscious energy. I experience that on things that should be simple. Walking with a yoke, right? How hard is it to walk? It's ingrained into like the most like basic part of our being. But if I'm anxious over a weight, or if I'm trying to cue something a little too hard, then it's like the whole chain goes down. And especially if something's hurting. And that's probably one of the things I think that's informed my reaction to a lot of this is I've been at it for very long, kind of middling around like the mid-range, kind of getting a little close to some more competitive ranks. But even that, the wear that my body has taken on, you cannot go forward without a willingness to push through, like to progressively whether you're actually using progressive overload or you're just trying to level up, you got to be willing to deal with training where shit hurts or with you're not quite sure. So I think you had a very reasonable take. It always just grates me when the people that are kind of selling themselves as having the answers are overly vague, paint with a broad brush, and then it's like, okay, that's great. My knee hurts. I have to squat. I have a contest in 6 weeks. I'm going through tubes of Voltaren like crazy. like, should I be worried? What do I do? And then, and in my experience, like some of the worst injuries came out of absolutely nowhere. And I think like you can see the look of surprise on some people's eyes when you see it just go. And that's kind of something you just have to be ready for.
Yeah, and it's always these people always come up with these answers in hindsight, or these, on the sort of movement optimist side. It does drive me mad when someone's doing a deadlift and their back goes from stiff like a board to like this, and then they get a disc injury, and then these people will go like, that's the reason why. And you're like, well, not really. It doesn't really work like that. There's so many factors, and we're probably just shooting in the dark. But it is funny. It seems that the stronger and more capable you get, and the more competitive you get in sport, the fewer number of allied health practitioners you can go to who can actually make sense of what's going on, because you'll go to them and you say, when I squat 300 kilos, my knee is sore. What should I do? And they're like, oh, well, have you tried just like not squatting for a while? And you're like, well, no, I can't do that. It's like, well, I guess we're just going to beat our head into a wall.
And then it kind of makes sense why you get a lot of voodoo that pops up, because I mean, people, I think in this field keep like chiropractors in business, or I mean, you'll get everything from like cupping to scraping to acupuncture, because there's a point where it's like, the doctors aren't going to do anything except say, here's some anti-inflammatories, stop doing whatever you're doing. And obviously that doesn't work. So it is unfortunate that there is such like lack of data.